quick, who I am, all that kind of jazz. My name's Chris Wahl. I do run a blog called wahlnetwork.com, mostly techie stuff. I'm kind of a nerd. Very happy about that. I also am a certified design expert, the VCDX with VMware, both in data center and network virtualization. I'm number 104. And I do a lot of courses on Pluralsight. I have 5 courses on there right now. They cover vCloud Director 5.1, which is kind of long in the tooth. I'm probably not going to update that. I've moved on to bigger and better. And I also did a couple courses for the Cisco Certified Network Associate, the CCNA, for data center. So if you're looking at getting certified as a CCNA data center, I cover all the exams there, and I think it's a pretty fair price. And I co-host a podcast called VoIP, because everything should be as a service, especially virtualization user podcasts. So you're welcome to listen to those. Just a quick plug for my book, Networking for VMware Admins. If you want to become a little more hands-on with networking from a physical and virtual perspective, and you want to do it as it relates to VMware, this book should be pretty cool. It's available in, the Klingon thing is just kind of a ha-ha. I'm working on getting that done, but it is available in Kindle and ebook and everything you can imagine. And I'm actually making no money on this book. Everything is going to charity for Alzheimer's Association. So it's not a money grab. I just hope that you learn a few things and you get to feel warm and fuzzy that you have donated to people that need your help. Okay, so hopefully you pick that up at some point. And then if you want to tweet anything, I believe it's VMUGDK. I hope that I got that right. Okay, good. I'm getting a head nod. So that's the hashtag. So you can say all the wonderful things about how you learned not to be a Minesweeper. So if you have negative things to say, you say just offline. If you have good things to say, tweet it publicly. Okay, that's how that works. Okay, so I will present to you the dilemma. And this is basically, we're gonna tell a story. And the story is about myself because I know what I did to not be a Minesweeper. And I'm hoping that some of the points along the way of my journey will help you stop being a Minesweeper as well. And I think this tag teams well with Joe's keynote this morning because I think he hit on a lot of things that resonated in my personal and professional life. And I think maybe it did with you as well. It's never nice to be told, hey, your infrastructure job is going away. Maybe you don't even agree with that. So we'll dive a little deeper into that. But as you can see here, this gentleman is trying to solve a Minesweeper game. Raise your hand if you ever played that game before. Okay, raise your hand if you play it at work today still. No? Raise your hand if you're playing it right now. Nobody, okay. And you'll see that there's actually no correct solution to the 2 blocks that are left over. There's not enough information for this gentleman to determine which one has the mine. So he has a 50-50 chance of having the whole game end and blow up in his face, which is kind of like IT. You know, everything we do, it has a 50-50 chance of kind of blowing up in our face. So I felt like this was a very good graphic. But I also define what a Minesweeper is, and I think it's kind of this mentality where we take this kind of manual process. It's a common operation and something we know how to do. It's mundane, and we just do it over and over and over again. Over and over and over again. It kind of looks like this. So when we see something that we need to do, you ever heard this joke before where it's like, oh, that install is just a next, 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 finish, and then you probably do it again. Maybe you're creating VLANs in a network. Maybe you're building LUNs on a storage array. Okay, it's a very manual operation. You just keep repeating it. And I found myself doing this quite a bit in my job. I've been in IT for 14 years. I've been on the customer side for 11 of those years, and the last 3 I've been working as a partner for VMware. And I found that a lot of my value as a professional in IT was around knowing how to do this and not blow up. And other people that would blow things up would have less value potentially. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's certainly a value in understanding how to configure and deploy and maintain services. But then if you start to kind of take a step back, see the forest for the trees, you notice that your life kind of begins to look like this. You have all these tasks, and it builds this kind of pyramid of next, next, next finishes, right? And then really, what's the value in that? Because in today's world, there's a lot less of this. You know, as I saw ways to add value in my career and to my business that I was working for, I found that this was less and less exciting to me. I wasn't getting the fulfillment that I wanted out of my career. And I felt like a lot of these tasks, these little next, next, finish workflows were being removed. So as an example, when I used to set up a storage array back in the early 90s, or I'm sorry, in the early 2000s, I haven't been in IT that long. Early 2000s, it required a week, 2 weeks for these big arrays. I would have to hire professional services. They would come in and help me deploy these things. They would build out the hypers and the metas and stripe it all and build these RAID groups and do all these mystical things. And now, a lot of new storage arrays, what do? You buy it, you rack it, you power it on, there's no config. So if you've banked on this as your value add, you are being put out of a job, which just is what it is. And so one example I think resonates really well. It kind of puts a smile to my face. And this was when I got hired at a call center, right? And they wanted to go voice over IP. And this is the phone they used, actually. I've learned to hate that phone. So they said, yeah, we've got 600 people out in this call center, and we're going to give them these voice over IP phones. They used to have the POT system, the old RJ11 cables going to them. And the voice over IP system doesn't have a software deployment model. They expect you to deploy this software to every workstation so that the call center worker could go in and log in and the phone would become available. And that way the phone would understand when the person was available or not. And this was kind of a new thing. This was early, 2004, something like that. So they gave me this, which felt archaic. I'm like, what is this? Last time I saw a CD-ROM was when I was getting the old AOL freebie CDs saying I could have 500 hours of internet back in the 90s. And they said, Chris, I want you to take this CD. I want you to spend all weekend going to every computer, put it in, takes about 5 minutes, and repeat that process 600 times. And this was my face when they told me that. No way. I am not doing that. I said, that's crazy. Now, I didn't really know how to automate that, but I said, I don't want to lose the weekend on this. This is crazy. I want to have my Saturday, my Sunday. And what if we find out there's an issue? The software is not the right code or whatever. So I said, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to look at this software, and I'm going to find a way to deploy it. And I had never really done this before. This was new to me. So I looked at a solution that you can install software using Active Directory. Is it the most elegant way to do it? No, absolutely not. There's probably a lot better ways. But I just found the first thing I could, and I said, if we put this little MSI file into Active Directory and we tell it to deploy to all the computers, it'll just do it when they reboot. And we know a little script command to reboot all the computers. That'll install the software. And this was literally the reaction. They thought I was a wizard. They were blown away, like, that's possible? And I said, yeah, I just Googled it. I found this thing that'll do it. And a little light bulb went off in my head saying, I just Googled a couple commands and I found a way to deploy software to 600 computers. It took about 30 minutes. And now I'm a wizard. That's a better way to add value. I should look more into this. I should find ways to provide this over and over and over again. And that's when I started to realize that really, as we look at our virtualization careers as well, there's this perception about what we're doing. So have you ever seen those slides where it's the 6 panels and it's what my mom thinks I do, what my friends think I do, all that kind of stuff? I think this is almost the what we think we do in a lot of cases, or at least it was what I thought I did. I thought I was this technical wizard, right? I had done this one deploy. And I think in virtualization for a lot of time, I thought I was this technical wizard because I would abstract the hardware resources into the virtual world, right? You install ESXi, check the box, that's done, you've abstracted. I would then pool, you build a cluster. Again, that's pretty easy, right? You go through a little workflow, root, password, you're good to go. But then VMware always told me after I abstract and I pool, I should automate. I wasn't doing that one. There's kind of a question there. What was I doing? I was doing a little more of this. I was playing Minesweeper or actually like sandwiches, and I love SpongeBob. If anyone's read the blog and any other stuff that I have, I'm kind of gaga about SpongeBob. No kids, so I'm just weird, right? But so I had to find a reason to put SpongeBob as a sandwich in the slide. So I would play Minesweeper. And in a lot of cases, this is technical debt. Rather than automating that process, that manual process, I would find an excuse to just do it the manual way, be the guy that's clicking the buttons, and say, I'll do it later. I'm not going to do that right now. It's only 2 installs or 5 installs or something like that. I don't have the time. And so I thought about it. What was I really doing as an IT professional? I was basically playing a lot of games of Minesweeper all at the same time. And because I'm the human element and fallible, and I have definitely made mistakes in my career, I have blown things up in a very magical way, that I was just playing Minesweeper but at a whole new level, right? I was playing with my applications, my ESXi hosts, my LUNs, and there was all these little places where my manual intervention, maybe I was tired, maybe I just didn't know quite what I was doing, I didn't Google it hard enough, and I would cause an explosion. And I realized that this had to change. I had to go back to being that wizard, right? Because if I kept doing this, eventually I would be out of a job or at least unhappy with my career. And so I started to look at why am I playing these games and why have we traditionally as IT professionals played these games, played this little Minesweeper click, click, click thing. And I kind of put up this laundry list of why do we put up with this or why did we? And I think there's a few answers to this. Number one, we have traditionally dealt with very closed and proprietary systems. Okay? We can't get data out of these things, or if we can, we have to buy a very expensive tool to do it. And tools are usually low on the budget. Okay? You want that nice storage array? Maybe. You want disaster recovery? No. You want a tool? I don't know. Who'd you take out to dinner yesterday? So I was working with a proprietary system. I didn't have any way to do social coding. And these have changed. Back in the day, though, there was the concept of social coding and being able to have a conversation with someone outside of my organization to understand ways to code. Didn't exist. There were some blogs, things like that, but for the whole actual social coding element didn't exist. There was also data graveyards, places that I just could not get to. Even if there was a tool to get to, or even if there was a proprietary system, there was no tool to get into that proprietary system. So I call that a data graveyard, where basically any kind of information that I needed was just not available to me. Sorry, you're a customer. You consume the product the way we want you to consume the product, and just buy the next version, all right? Shut up. I was also spending a lot of my time firefighting, okay? And it's typically viewed as a heroic thing in IT to be the guy or girl that comes in and saves the day. You fix whatever's wrong with the system. You debug whatever's causing issues, and that's a heroic thing. If you keep things running quietly in the background, people question your value. They say, everything's working great. Why am I paying you? I want to see some action. So it almost makes you want to just break some minor things. Like, I fix that, put a ticket in for that. Maybe like just make the CEO's laptop slow, and then fix that. You're good for 6 months. There was no software development kits or APIs in any meaningful way back in the day. It was very hard to get data in and out of systems, certainly through APIs. A lot of systems used to use its own proprietary methods to talk to whatever it needed to talk to, basically the underlay storage or the underlay middleware. They did not make that available to us, so I didn't have access to it. And then finally, the 80-20 rule. Anyone ever heard of that before? Where you spend 80% of your time keeping the lights on and 20% of your time innovating? I think it's a lie. I think there's the 100-20 rule. We spend 100% of the week keeping things running. We spend our nights and weekends innovating, right? Sunday is maintenance day. It's the fourth Sunday of the blue moon when you get the change control approved to innovate something or improve something. And the rest of the time, you're expected to spend 40 to 60 hours just keeping the lights running. So I had no real opportunity to not be a Minesweeper. And these are just things that had to change and reasons that I was going through this process. Unfortunately, as was alluded to earlier, Skynet is coming. Unfortunately, also, Arnold does not look like this anymore. So he is very much an old guy. So I think the men and women in this room are the new Arnold Schwarzeneggers, are the new Terminators that are going to come in and solve this Skynet problem. Okay, but I do believe it's coming. It's a little ways off, though. But that's almost kind of a benefit of the fact that we have that crystal ball. We know what 3 to 5 years is potentially going to look like. I think the big boys that are playing in the cloud space have kind of shown us this works. This looks good. It's not going to hit us soon, but it is coming, which is kind of nice. We're not just going to be struck blindside by this. I also noticed that the gentleman in this photo is wearing pajamas, which I thought was kind of cool. So this is like the most wacky photo I could find. A guy in pajamas driving a horse and buggy down a highway. So I just thought it was kind of neat. And then you got this guy who's giving us gloom and doom and happened to walk in as well. That's saying that you're not going to have a job. Everything's going to be software. There'll be no data centers. They'll all be self-healing. It'll go down, and you won't even get a page. So I think he's right. It's just a matter of when, not what or how. It's just when. When is this going to happen? So I'm not just going to preach doom and gloom. I'm going to show you what I did and what I think you all can do. And the fortunate part is pretty much everything I'm going to talk about is freely available. Okay? That sound fair? Nobody likes to pay for things, right? All right, good. So we got some changes that are coming. There's this one vendor, he made a great quote to me. I said, he released some APIs with his new product. I'm like, that's great. You got APIs coming out. What about the next version? And they said, inside the company, they have mandated, is ironclad at the CEO level, they will not release any feature that doesn't have a well-documented API to accompany it. These are the vendors that used to have these closed data lakes, these data graveyards that we couldn't get to, are now saying, we won't produce anything that you can't get to in your own way, shape, or form. Everything will be open. And this is a vendor that does storage too, which is, storage vendors are usually quite snotty about that kind of stuff. I also think there's a few things that we need to focus on that this whole revolution around not being a Minesweeper is not about. So I think there's a few things that people are getting wrong. Number one, it's not about being fully software defined today. I think it's a journey. Okay? If you look at the software defined data center, the software defined network, or software defined fill in the blank, whatever noun you want, that's certainly what we're trying to get to. But like any complex problem, if you look at it that way and say, I want to be the software defined magic data center that everything just happens in software, and that's where you start, you're going to fail. You have to take this complex problem, break it down into smaller chunks, and attack the ones that you can attack. And over time, the problem will be solved. And so I know a lot of folks that go into this thinking, all right, I want a full infrastructure as a service, I want cloud, and they're still dealing with a Windows 7 migration. It's like, how are you going to make a cloud if you can't even fix your desktops? Or you're still running Windows 2000 or Great Plains or something horrible in your data center. Get off NT first, then we'll talk about your cloud. Okay, so I think it's a complex problem. Number two, it's not about being the best. This is probably the detriment of IT, the top of the list of the detriment of things that kill IT. Okay, we spend so much time as IT professionals, at least I did as a Minesweeper, looking at, all right, I've got this particular E5 processor, and this amount of RAM, and this megahertz, and all this kind of junk, and then this one over here, and it really doesn't matter. Okay, in the grand sense of schemes, pick the one that works, make sure that it works, and then move on with it. This also, I think, applies to coding and developing software and things like that, and scripts. I think scripts actually comes up a lot. People want to write this script that is just amazing and clean and just beautiful. And I'm like, look, you're just deploying 4 VMs. Just write the script and get on with it, or whatever it is. So don't worry about being the best. You can refine that. It takes practice. Don't let it cause analysis paralysis, where you spend so much time analyzing the solutions that you don't ever pick one. Okay. Third thing, it's not about being a programmer. I would disagree that you have to be a programmer and just leave your infrastructure roots behind completely. In fact, I think being an infrastructure professional gives you a leg up over anyone that writes software because you kind of understand the system, right? You understand the pain points of the UI. You understand how these different food groups in the data center, the storage, network, compute, and applications talk to one another. You understand that, has anyone worked with poor user interfaces before? Something that looked god-awful and you're like, who made this? Why is it in Java? Things like that. Right. Because the programmer probably didn't understand what the heck he was programming against. He just said, okay, I've got a backlog here. You want these 9 features. Let me put 3 of them into a sprint. Let me burn it down. It's deployed. Okay, let me do the next one. Just shoving code out there. I never thought to say, what does this stuff do? So you have that benefit. And I think that if you add some programming knowledge around that, some scripting knowledge around that, you will have the advantage. And then, it's a little tongue-in-cheek. It's not about eating sandwiches or playing Minesweeper. So, although they're optional. I'm not, you got to eat. So, quick little story. When I went to college many years ago, I went to college to be a programmer. I was going to be a CIS major, computer information systems major, and I really hated it. There was one reason for this. The language that I was learning back then was this thing called COBOL. It's that, where the monkey is, because it's a horrible programming language. And so I had to spend 2 semesters, basically a year, learning COBOL. And I said, if this is what I have to do as a career, I'm out. I do not want to do this for the rest of my life. I'd spent many years doing BBSs and DOS and C and things like that, and I said, this is garbage. So I really hated that, and by the end of the year, I was a sad panda. And I went into networking, which was fun. We got to run cables and get dirty and go through the ceilings, and I don't know why I picked networking. I should have just picked project management or something, where you just don't actually do anything, get paid. Is any project managers in here? I don't know. So, this is basically the pivot point. This is where I give you the call to action to pick your poison, right? Not literally, but figuratively. You have to pick something, and it's not going to taste that good when you start, right? Because it's something new. And I've always said when there's something new, or when I'm working with a system and I'm uncomfortable, I'm in the right direction. If I'm ever completely comfortable or I'm working with a system and I'm like, yeah, this is old hat, no problem, I'm doing the wrong thing because I'm not learning something that I'm comfortable with. You have to challenge yourself with things that make you uncomfortable, and it's a little bit like taking a little sip of poison. You're like, I don't know if I like this or not. Let me keep trying until I can get it right. So when I said this at the UK, there was a little bit of a chuckle, the power of P, but I mean the letter P. And essentially, there's a lot of programming and config management and tools that start with the letter P. That's basically where I'm going there. So number one, we have PowerShell, probably the most awesome shell that I've ever used for Windows. Windows has historically been what? Batch scripts, JavaScripts, line commands of some sort. It's kind of been a horrible system to script with until Monad Shell, aka PowerShell, came out. So it's completely free, version 3 or better. Lots of command line options in there if you're a Windows person or have to deal with Windows. I think it's a great place to start. PowerCLI, version 5.8 or later, is out. 5.8 I think is current right now. Which I always thought was a little ironic that VMware being a, underneath the covers it's kind of Linuxy, right? There's no Windows there. Actually picked the Windows scripting language to be like the go-forward automation language. VMware actually has probably the best set of modules and snap-ins for PowerShell than any other vendor I've ever worked with. They put a lot of time and resources into this, and again, 100% free. If you're more of a Linuxy guy or gal, Python, please avoid version 3. So, does anyone work with Python? Okay, a couple people. Would you agree? Version 3, not so great? Yes, 2.7.8 is the latest too. Basically in 3, they said, let's semantically change a whole bunch of stuff for no reason. That's version 3. There's really no other improvement. And most people don't write plugins for it. So version 2 is great. And then Puppet, they have an open source version. If you want to do config management, Puppet is a great place to start. It's very real world declarative language. They actually give you a virtual machine that teaches you how to use Puppet. So you download the VM and it's like having HAL 9000 going, hello Dave, here's how you use me, which is cool. And there's a couple other choices if you don't like the letter P. My personal favorite is vCenter Orchestrator. Who owns a licensed copy of vCenter in this room? Hopefully everybody. Okay, most of you. Then you own vCenter Orchestrator. It's already installed on your vCenter server if you're using the Windows flavor. Just turn it on and start using it. It's probably the most awesome, freely integrated kind of workflow engine I've ever seen. It's very graphical. You don't really need to know a lot of code at all. Definitely something to put on your list of things to play with. So then I kind of come to this, so I'm going on my journey. I've kind of picked those as my 4 go-forward things, and I noticed they all began with the letter P. I was like, oh, cool. Maybe that's just some kind of coincidence. I started working with these pieces of software, and I noticed I wasn't very good at Python. I'm mediocre. I really liked PowerShell. I got a lot of things done with PowerShell over the years. And then I read this book called Outliers. Okay, so the only problem with Outliers is that Malcolm Gladwell loves himself and constantly kind of talks about how awesome he is. Other than that, he has this thing called the 10,000 hour rule. If you've never heard of the 10,000 hour rule, it's basically saying after 10,000 hours of doing whatever, you're going to be really good at whatever. You're going to be an expert. One of the references he uses is the Beatles. He said the Beatles played for 10,000 hours, and that's why they were awesome. Would you agree with that? I think you're saying no. Okay. Fortunately, do I agree with that? To some degree. I think practice makes perfect. You can definitely gain skills by repetitious time spent on it, but I don't believe that there's any hard number that you can go against. I don't believe there's this epiphany point at 10,000 hours and you become this God mode level scripter, programmer, whatever it may be. I believe that it has a little more to do with what suits your personality and what you find interest in, because if your heart's into it and you're passionate about it, you're going to get really good at it in a lot less than 10,000 hours. I also think there's a community aspect to a lot of these things, and that 1 + 1 really does equal 3. So if it's just you by yourself, all you have is you. If you have someone else to bounce ideas against or work with you in your journey, you're going to put out a lot more than you could individually. So I don't necessarily think this is a great resource, and this kind of gets thrown in my face a lot, so I tend to point it out. But regardless, start now or tomorrow. Maybe you have a drive home. Learn, improve, start figuring out what do these things do. I don't necessarily care if you have a use case in mind for any of these scripting or config management tools, but I think it's important to look through the list and find the one that kind of resonates with you. For me, it was PowerShell. I just like it. I don't know why. It's just a scripting language, verb noun format, does a lot of things in Windows. I tend to work in Linux more anyways. I don't know, I just like Windows for PowerShell. But I think the important part is you kind of pick one that you're like, this is interesting. I kind of want to learn this, because then you'll be successful. And then please do the gold item, share what you're doing. There's lots of ways you can share, and that's the best way that you can grow. because you might spend 8 hours bashing your head against the wall trying to figure out why this piece of code or script doesn't work. Someone's going to look at it because they have a different perspective in 3 seconds and say, oh yeah, I missed a period. And you're like, oh, I missed a period right there. How did I not see that? Or a colon or whatever it may be. So I really think sharing is critical to being successful as breaking out of your Minesweeper. And a lot of these tools didn't exist for sharing back then. I ended up just sharing with physical people at VMware user groups or at scripting user groups, Windows user groups, etc. This is a great platform to share what you're doing and get someone else to help you along the way. I think there's some trends as well that have pushed me out of being a Minesweeper because I've traditionally thought of myself as an infrastructure person, and more and more recently, I'm getting scared about being that. I don't want to be that anymore. I don't think that's a future for me. I want to pivot my career because these are the things I'm seeing from the customers that I work with, right? This is the actual commentary coming back. Their app dev teams are being forced to code around infrastructure. They are no longer it's no longer acceptable for them to say, well, the hardware will survive the failure. I don't have to worry about it. It's no longer acceptable. The application has to be resilient outside of infrastructure. They're also being told to build distributed applications. No more of that rancid SQL clustering where you have that RDM in the middle and no one ever likes virtualizing that thing. That's not allowed. You can't do that anymore. So the app dev teams are not allowed to do that in a lot of cases. They're also being asked to code in feedback loops. Has anyone heard of a feedback loop before? Not like an audio feedback loop where it sounds like something screaming into the microphone. So feedback loops are kind of new and very scary for infrastructure, I think. They add a lot of scariness for me in my job back in the day. Because what happens, you get a request, I want a virtual machine or whatever it is. Okay, fill it out, and then you throw it down the line, and you hope no one says anything. You hope they just take it and they're happy. Because if they say something, it's because it's wrong, they want a bigger one, something comes back. The feedback was always negative. It's either, I'm happy with what you gave me, go away, or I'm not happy, I need you to do whatever. And the trend that I'm seeing is feedback loops for every piece of that process, good or bad. How long did it take us? Was that better than last time? Was it worse than last time? Are you solving my problem appropriately? Is that virtual machine working for you? All those kind of things that we never really focused on, I think, historically. You know, the ticket would be closed, and that's the last we hear about it. Whereas now, the ticket never closes. It's always a conversation. And so that's kind of new. And the fact that they can, in some cases, get these in an off-prem resource, some kind of cloud resource. So in some cases, there's competition. They don't need to use you. They don't need to use me. They can go somewhere else. Now, there's a lot of stars I put around that. Compliance. Maybe they need to keep it in country. Maybe there's some kind of auditing thing. So maybe this isn't an option to them. But I think this sparked a lot of it with that whole shadow IT, song and dance. So, and then from our side, we have to adapt to these needs. Ultimately, the app dev team is driving the business forward by developing applications that are consumed to make money. They want to make money. You're there to give them a platform to do it. So if we don't adapt, we're going to be extinct, or they're going to go somewhere else, or they're going to find someone else that can do it for them. And I think the biggest drive that I'm seeing and that impacts my day-to-day is the SDLC and being a value add to the software development life cycle. So as they're trying to write code, typically we get in the way. I know I did. I'd had a team of 500 developers that used to request resources from my VMware farm, which was miserable because they would want stuff every day. And I didn't want to give them stuff every day. And I had no clue why they wanted this stuff and what they were doing with it. And I had thousands of virtual machines that were just black box. I had no clue what this crap was doing. I didn't like that. And I think that made me a little bit of a minesweeper in that I would spend time saying, okay, it's going to take you 3 days to get your VM because I don't want to give it to you right now. I can't do capacity management if I'm giving VMs out every hour. It just didn't work for me. I needed to pivot. I needed tools to do it. I just didn't have access to it. So I think that's going to be crucial moving forward. I also get a lot of people say, I don't need this stuff at my work. We don't do this kind of stuff. I don't need it. It's irrelevant. We just have our VMs. We're good. Nothing ever changes. So that's probably the purple area of the graph that I highlighted there. So if I had these random 6 companies, they would all say, I don't need this stuff. I don't need platform as a service or infrastructure as a service. I don't need feedback loops. We don't use that kind of crap. Well, what's going to happen in my mind is that there's going to be this one guy that says, let's try this out. Let's do it. And they're going to do it and maybe not be successful the first time. It might take them a few tries. But they'll get it right. and they'll implement it, and all of a sudden they'll be the badass that's way out there and you're behind, company-wise. They'll be kicking your butt. And then what does every client I ever work with ask me? First question, what's my competitor doing? How are they able to move so quickly? What software are they using? What hardware? What methodologies? And I'm going to answer and I'm going to tell them they're doing these things. And they're going to say, oh my gosh, we need to do those things. And then everyone's going to do those things because if they don't, they'll be obscure. No one will use their product or their service. I think we've seen this over and over and over again in the market. And then everyone will go nuts on whatever that thing is and it'll become super popular. So just like this graph, I think we'll see this purple area where not much change in a lot of ways for a couple years. Great. Great time to incubate your skills. And then you'll have this inflection point and it'll go nuts. I also heard this quote a while ago, back when I was a Novell admin. I don't want to use this AD crap in my work. Nobody uses that. Now it's gone. So just a kind of proof in the pudding there. All right, so what resources can we use for learning? This is kind of the meat here. And by the way, I had a guy ask me about the Scrooge McDuck thing, and the only advice I can give is, unlike the comic where he dives into the gold coins like liquid, that's not reality. Don't try that. It hurts. Okay, so PowerShell, first and foremost, very easy to get if you're a Windows guy or gal. This is a great book that you can read by O'Reilly. Now, I understand it's PowerShell, so I get why they put the turtle on there, but really, a turtle, that feels insulting for some reason. I don't know. Maybe a turtle with like wings on it or something. So another good thing that just came out of Windows with PowerShell version 4 and later, you get the desired state config tool, or basically those modules. Has anyone heard of DSC? Nobody? Oh, got some people over here. This is configuration management using PowerShell for Windows, Linux, network devices. You basically get a config management tool baked into a free scripting language using DSC in PowerShell 4 and later. So I think that's going to be huge. They are really attacking all different operating systems and your infrastructure itself. So definitely something to get on your radar. So I prefer version 4. There's no... version 3 just had less things than 4. It's not like Python where they just screwed up version 3. PowerCLI. We actually had a guy, Alan Renouf, was in the audience at the UK one, but Alan wrote a great book alongside Luke Deakins. They are phenomenal resources. VMware PowerCLI probably has the best community I've ever seen for a scripting language. So if you've ever heard of the VMTN, the VMware Technical Network, there's a forums on there. There's a scripting forum where you can ask questions of your peers. Luke Deakins, I think, has written a PowerCLI script that notifies him and answers questions within like 2 minutes. It's crazy. I used to try to contribute to this forum, could not beat this man. So if you have a scripting language, please post it there, and he will get to you. It's insane. Just try it once. Ask a really easy question. Just say, look, Chris told me to try this. I just want to see how fast he'd respond. And maybe then he won't, just to piss me off. There's also a book called Learning PowerCLI from Pack Publishing. These are great books. They're, maybe, I don't know the conversion here, but in US, you're looking at $20 to $30. So whatever that might be it's a low investment rate, right? And then the tools are free. If you want to go into Python, this is an awesome book. It's called Python Programming for the Absolute Beginner. It teaches you how to make games. If you ever thought learning code sucked, which it does, try making video games with it. It's a lot more fun. Because then they have a game in here where you build like this little like ogre guy. He's rocking around. You're going to go stab the ogre and you win. You get points. But I took a picture of my boss and made him the ogre. And then I gave him a copy of the game. I was like, yeah, I tried to beat level 2. And he's like, so you can have a lot of fun with that. All the code is in the book. So if you buy the book, again, it's maybe $30 US, something like that. It comes with a CD that has all the software, or you can download it. If you get an e-version of it, you can download it on their website. And it'll go through all the code. They have code samples and things like that. You can learn how to do Python. Everything is a video game that you build. It's object-oriented, but it's also very script-friendly. It's very human-friendly language. And there's this awesome package management tool called pip. So you can just tell pip that you want a new package. It'll go out and find it. If you've ever used Linux, apt-get, or yum, it's the same concept. And this is also available for Windows and Linux. I'm assuming Mac, but I don't do Mac, so I have no idea. Not a friend of the fruit. COBOL. My only comment there. Just no. Stay away. Complete garbage. You can hashtag that VMUG DK. I said that. It's garbage. The last one, Puppet, open source. Again, they have that learning virtual machine. There's a couple books up here. The DevOps for VMware Administrators is not quite out yet. The gentlemen there, Trevor, Cody, and Josh, are just well-known, respected individuals in the community. They're going to put a lot of interesting content in this book. You can get it on Safari Rough Cuts right now. And then if you want to get something that's already available, the Puppet 3 book by Pact is already out. You can go and get that book. Again, they're all pretty cheap. And they walk through a pretty good amount of scenarios and config scenarios and what you might want to do with this. And again, the VM is also available. So what I did was I grabbed the Puppet 3 book. I went through that. I had the learning VM, and I had an open source copy of the Puppet software installed, and I used that. I'm not using the Puppet Enterprise. That's the paid-for version. I'm just using regular open source Puppet. You don't need to know any Ruby. That's what it's built on top of. So if you want to go with something different like Chef, you need to know Ruby. And it's a declarative language. So it reminds me a lot of like filling out a JSON file. What do you want this to look like? And then match it up. So really cool stuff. Works really well with Linux. Kind of for Windows. I think that'll get fixed eventually. Hopefully, fingers crossed. And then last but certainly not least, this thing called Codecademy. Has anyone heard of Codecademy before? A good number of hands. That's really great. When I started talking about this a while ago, it was low. You can learn, I just have an example of 6 languages: CSS, jQuery, JavaScript, Python, Ruby. They're all available here. It's all free, and they have kind of a funky business model, right? So they have like this 4-step business model. Starting at the top, they have experts that come in and build these training modules. And it's a good way for them to get their name out there and kind of get some recognition and build this living resume. As you go through the modules that are free, beginners learn from them and become experts. And then they're hoping you'll go around the cycle with them. And so that's how they can make all of this completely free. If you go on Codecademy and build a login, there's actually no need to install software because the web page turns into your integrated development environment, your IDE or your ISE for integrated scripting environment. So if you just get this little cursor on there, and it'll have a little example on the left and say, hey, we need you to do this stuff. And they don't tell you how. You try to do it, you hit the little green button, say run, and it'll say yes or no. There's hints and there's solutions. So it walks you through it on your own time. If you log back in, it'll pick up right where it left off. Okay, so these are great resources, low cost to free, that you can use today or tomorrow if you're busy. There's pizza and beer later today, so maybe not today. Maybe that's a tomorrow thing, to get started. And I think if you really spend a little bit of time each day going through these things and trying to figure out which one kind of marinates with you, you'll find that now you can start solving problems in a whole new way. And you as one person will be able to do the work of 10 people because you can automate this. You can talk to an API. You can pull in data or push data and script these things. And you could just hide that fact, and someone can say, oh, go install these 10 computers. And you're like, whew, that'll take me a week. Script, done in an hour. Be like, well, now I got 4 days and 9 hours to just do whatever I want. Or you can tell them about it, and then they can say, cool, here's a big fat raise and give you that big money bag with coins inside. That's not actually going to happen, just FYI. So to finish up, I have a story that I want to tell where I thought, I'm kind of an open source, GitHub nerd. I like that kind of stuff. And so I do a lot of work on GitHub that is private, but I have a fair amount that's actually public. So if you look me up on GitHub, all my source code is available for free. I have scripts and things for NSX and vCenter and things like that. And I had an impact story. This is how GitHub kind of changed my life, and this is somewhat recent. So I was writing this code for a dashboard, and I will show kind of what that looks like. If I can get this to minimize for a second. So I had this dashboard that basically I do all these API calls, and it tells me the resource usage on my hosts and what my FVP cluster is doing for Pernix data and my top VMs. And this was just a project where I wanted to prove myself, can I do it? So I wrote this to just basically be a dashboard for my home lab. Okay, I thought it was kind of cool. That's challenging. But as I shared the code, see if I can get that up here. Slideshow from current slide. There we go. I said, this part of the script is driving me nuts. Now I have a module for the hosts and another one for the VMs and another one for the clusters and things like that. And each module runs and updates by using API calls to keep the dashboard up to date. I couldn't find a good way to call all those modules at the same time. PowerShell is a very serial language. It does one thing, waits till it's done, then comes back. And I said, I want to call all of them at the same time. There's got to be some way to kind of parallelize PowerShell. And I had this job script block, and I'm sorry if you can't read it. It's not really important what it says on there. I had this job script locked on there that couldn't quite get it to work. I found a workaround, but it ended up being I manually put a path in there, and that's ugly. We don't want manual inside these things. So I did this. I put a help wanted tag, and I described my problem, and I put a sample bit of code. And I said, does anyone know how to fix this? I don't get it. I'm an okay PowerShell scripter, but I'm not an expert by any means. This guy came back the next day. He's like, this is the code that will fix all of your stuff, and I've improved upon it. And here it is for you for free. Here's the answer to life, the universe, and everything, no charge. I thought that was really cool. It really touched me. I was like, wow, this guy took the time to go through help wanted tags, found one, and then went and tested my code, found a way to do it better, and then said, here you go, here's code, you can have it. And so when I released the next version, I made sure to give him credit, because that's, paying it forward. And I said, can I use this as an example? And he's like, oh yeah, absolutely, sure. This is the whole point, is that I'm going to help you. Hopefully you use that knowledge to help someone else, and we keep going around the wheel. And I think that if you embrace kind of the social coding aspect and being able to share your code, there's going to be a few people who are just jerks, and that's life. But you're going to find, by and large, most people are pretty much like this gentleman. They're going to want to share their passion and share ways to improve your code with the hopes that you'll pass it along and pay it forward elsewhere. And so if I could leave you with like kind of any kind of warm and fuzzies, that's basically the thing that's it right there. And so that's the session that I had prepared today. Hopefully the count of Minesweepers will continue to decrease. And if you'd like to get a hold of me, these are other places that I am. But otherwise, thank you very much.